Rain tapped against the diner windows as Sam wiped down the counter, her father's dog tags weighing heavy in her apron pocket. Outside, a man with a worn guitar played to an indifferent world, his case nearly empty. Something in his melody, raw, honest, reminded her of her father's humming before each deployment. Sam stepped outside, offering him a warm meal and her morning's tips. "You reminded me of someone," was all she said. The guitarist nodded, eyes meeting hers with quiet understanding. She never expected to see him again, especially not at her father's funeral the next morning, standing in a borrowed suit, playing taps on a polished bugle as her father's flag-draped casket was lowered into the ground. The cemetery was quiet under gray skies, a modest gathering of co-workers, army buddies, and neighbors who remembered the quiet man with a firm handshake and a fondness for telling terrible jokes to make his daughter laugh. Sam stood beside the casket in her only black dress, clutching her father's photo, looking both very young and impossibly old. The honor guard presented arms, their movements precise, respectful. The flag was carefully removed from the casket, folded with meticulous care into a tight triangle. The officer presenting it to Sam spoke words that were traditional, formal, but his eyes were kind. "On behalf of the President of the United States Army, and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your loved one's honorable and faithful service." Sam accepted the flag, holding it against her chest like a shield, like a lifeline. And then it was time. Eli appeared from the road, not the parking lot, walking with dignity that belied his second-hand suit. He hadn't arrived with the other mourners or the honor guard. He stood apart, waiting, the bugle gleaming dully in the overcast light. The funeral director nodded to him, and Eli stepped forward, positioning himself at the foot of the grave. He took a deep breath, his eyes meeting Sam's across the casket. She gave him the smallest nod. Permission, trust. When he lifted the bugle to his lips, there was a moment of stillness, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The first note wavered, then steadied, rising into the still air with haunting clarity. Every note that followed carried weight, purpose, memory. Eli played not just with technical skill, but with understanding, each phrase telling the story of a life of service, of sacrifice, of quiet heroism. An old soldier with a cane saluted through tears. A woman in nurse's scrubs closed her eyes, swaying slightly. Sam pressed the folded flag against her chest, breath-catching. For those moments, there was no grief too heavy, no loss too profound, just music, pure, honest, final. The melody floated above them all, a bridge between what was and what would be. When the last note faded, hung suspended in the air for a heartbeat, then dissipated like mist, Eli lowered the bugle. He didn't bow or acknowledge the gathering. He simply turned and walked away, disappearing down the road he'd come from, footsteps crunching softly on gravel. Sam watched him go, something tight in her chest finally loosening, like a knot being untied. She hadn't known what she needed until that moment. Not just a bugler, but someone who understood what this moment meant. Someone who could say through music what words could never express. Days passed. The diner crowd thinned after the lunch rush. Sam refilled coffee cups, took orders, made change. Life continued its relentless forward motion. The grief didn't disappear, but it changed shape, became something she could carry. One quiet afternoon, she sat at the counter during her break, writing on a notepad. Marco peered over her shoulder. "What's that?" he asked. "A letter," Sam said, "to the newspaper. About a bugler who showed up when I needed him most." Marco raised an eyebrow. "The homeless guy?" Sam looked up. "He's not just a homeless guy. He's a veteran." She paused. "And he saved my dad's goodbye." The letter was published the following Sunday. Sam titled it simply, "The Bugler Who Saved My Dad's Goodbye." In it, she told the story of a stranger with a weathered instrument who appeared when she had nothing left to give and gave her everything. She wrote about dignity, about service, about the language of music that speaks when words fail. She signed it with her full name and her father's rank and unit. The response was immediate. The story went viral. shared by veterans groups, local news outlets, and eventually national ones. People recognized something in the story, not just grief or kindness, but something deeper about what it means to see another person, truly see them, when the rest of the world has looked away. A week later, Sam got a call from a music conservatory in the city. "We saw the article," the dean said. "We'd like to find Eli. We have a program for veterans, scholarships, instruments, housing." With help from the shelter coordinator, they found him, huddled under the overpass, his guitar and bugle wrapped carefully in a tarp to protect them from the elements, while he himself was soaked through from the rain. When the dean explained the offer, Eli shook his head, water dripping from his hair. "I don't deserve this," he protested, looking to Sam, who had come along. "I just played one song." Sam met his eyes, remembering the way the notes had carried across the cemetery, how for those brief minutes, everyone there had been united in something profound and true. "You gave dignity to someone you never met," she said quietly. "If that's not deserving, I don't know what is." He looked away, then down at his bugle case. "I'm not who you think I am," he said, voice rough. "I've made mistakes, done things I'm not proud of." "So has everyone," Sam replied. "Doesn't mean you don't get a second chance." Slowly, Eli nodded. "Okay," he said. "I'll try." 6 months later, the VA hospital's recreation room was filled with veterans from different eras: Vietnam, Desert Storm, Afghanistan, Iraq. Men and women in wheelchairs, with canes, with prosthetic limbs, with invisible wounds that ran deeper than any physical scar. On the small stage, Eli Rivers stood with a student jazz ensemble from the conservatory. His hair was cut short, his face clean-shaven, his clothes simple but new. He played not the bugle today, but a trumpet, the music flowing from him with confidence and passion. In the back of the room, Sam watched, her eyes bright with unshed tears. She'd taken the afternoon off from the diner, her first day off in months that wasn't for a funeral or a doctor's appointment. As the final song ended, the room erupted in applause. Eli smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, and bowed slightly. As the audience began to disperse, he made his way through the room to where Sam stood. "They want me to teach here," he said without preamble. "A music therapy program for vets with PTSD." Sam smiled. "You should. You'd be good at it." Eli nodded, then looked down at the trumpet in his hands. "Your dad," he said after a moment, "was the first person I ever saluted through music. I didn't know him, but I'll never forget him." Sam reached out, squeezed his arm gently. "Now, a lot of people won't." They stood there a moment longer, two people brought together by loss, but connected by something stronger, the understanding that sometimes salvation comes not in grand gestures, but in simple acts of humanity. Outside, the sun broke through clouds, casting warm light through the hospital windows. In the distance, a military bugle played retreat as the flag was lowered for the day. Eli lifted his head, listening, a soldier's instinct. Sam did the same. Sometimes heroes don't wear medals or march in parades. Sometimes they carry a bugle, play a final note, and quietly walk away. But sometimes they find their way back.